Meeting. All right, so we are live. So please introduce yourself to our community here, and we'll get started.
Does it show the PowerPoint?
Yeah, so I see the PowerPoint, nope, the raw PowerPoint stuff. So now we see the background. Yeah. Okay, great. Now it looks good.
Just want to make sure it was showing the right monitor.
All right.
Okay, so my name is Teresa Eller. Like Tom said, I'm actually in Houston, Texas. It's about a 200% humidity today because it rained. And that's all my contact information. I actually have already published this PowerPoint out on SlideShare. So if you just go to slideshare.net/SharePoint you can search for Njspug. I've made it all one word, or you can search on the title, but it's Njspug introduction, blah, blah, blah. So just so you guys know, it's already out there. I do have 2 dogs, so hopefully they will stay quiet. If you're barking, that's what it is. I like to be highly involved in the SharePoint community. So I've been speaking at SharePoint Saturdays for about 4 years. I have a blog. I'm part of this AOS community, which you may not have heard of. It's an international organization, kind of like SharePoint Saturday, where they do free events, but they're usually during the week. And they only present in French-speaking countries. And so I'm fortunate that I'll be speaking with them in Loire Valley in France in September. Of course, I'm on Twitter, and I always like to make sure everybody knows about the hashtag SPHelp. If you have any questions, you can actually go out to Twitter, post your question, tag it with SPHelp, and hopefully somebody will help you out. That is actually how I learned about PNP in the first place. Was I wanted to know if there was a way to save a publishing site as a template, put it on Twitter with SPHelp, and got quite a few answers. So based on the answers that I got and all the research and trial and error that I did, I put together this presentation to share. So we're actually going to talk about from the very beginning, how do you install SharePoint PNP PowerShell, because if you're on Windows 7, it's a little more complicated than if you're on Windows 10. There's just some extra steps you have to do. So instead of making you go to 12 different websites to figure out what the order is, I have everything documented here. And then we're actually going to get into SharePoint PNP. We're going to take a look at the script that I use. It's one that I, of course, found on the internet and modified it to fit my needs. I never reinvent the wheel. I don't start from scratch because you know somebody else has already done it. And then I've also documented some of the errors that I've run into and kind of what they mean and how I figured out how to fix them. And then at the very end, I have a list of resources, basically links, and then a page of people who helped me out. So if you need help, it's great places to get some. All right. So SharePoint patterns and practices. It was really interesting to me to learn that it was actually created by Microsoft. They were working on transferring everything from dedicated tenants, Office 365 tenants, to multi-tenants. And then basically when they were done with that, they released it to the public. So done by the community for the community, just like all of the SharePoint user groups and SharePoint Saturdays. So this is kind of a topic that both Microsoft works on, but so does the community, and there are a lot of community leaders. So it's a team effort. And basically what PNP PowerShell does is it's executing CSOM in the background. So you don't have to write your own CSOM. You can just use the PowerShell commandlets that have been created. And the top PowerShell PNP command or engine is the provisioning engine, and that's the one that we're actually going to talk a little bit about because that's the one that you use to save a site as a template. So getting into how to actually install SharePoint PNP, you need this PowerShell get module for, and this kind of gives you an idea of what it's used for. If you have Windows 10, then it's already included, but if you're like a lot of companies, you might still be on Windows 7. And so for Windows 7, there are some requirements. You have to have at least Windows PowerShell 3.0. There's Package Management Module, which is also known as the Windows Management Framework. You need it 4.0 or higher. When I looked today, I saw that 5.1 is out. So as long as you're using 4.0 or higher, you'll be good. And then the PowerShell Get module, which is available from GitHub. And it actually gives you a link here of where you can go to get the latest release. They do update it every month. And in addition to updating it every month, they actually have a monthly call that you can participate in. And in about the first 20 minutes of the call, they go over what's new and what's coming. Like last month, I think, no, it was this month, but they said that they're going to be releasing some PNP for OneDrive. So I'm very anxious to see how that is what that's going to do for us. So you have to make sure that you're running either the PowerShell console or the SharePoint Online Management Console with elevated permissions. So when you open it up, just make sure that you right-click and choose Run as Administrator. There are two methods for installing the PowerShell Get module. You can basically download it and save it to this directory. I think I have the directory on the next screen. And then you just do import module, and or you can also, you can do import module. I have a screenshot of it, import module PowerShell Get. Or you can go through this method, which I have not done. I prefer to do things the simple way. But I copied this straight off of, I think it was TechNet or MSDN, one of the two. So, you know, it's out there. I didn't create this myself. So I am not a developer. I do want to make that clear. I am actually more of an IT pro SharePoint administrator. I do a lot of development of not out of the box solutions, but don't laugh at me, but I'm still doing InfoPath, SharePoint Designer workflows, and then just a lot of anything but writing code. I do take code and modify it for my needs, but I'm not the in-depth developer that I know Tom is. Okay, so again, if you have Windows 7, make sure you import the PowerShell Get module first. And then whether you're on Windows 7 or Windows 10, you're going to want to download the SharePoint PowerShell PNP module. And that little asterisk at the end represents either online 2013 or 2016, depending on what platform you're on. And this is the June release, as I mentioned. If you just go to the releases URL, then you'll get whatever the latest update is. It's usually updated within about the 10 first days of the month, so probably in the next 2 weeks we'll be seeing the July release. Run your PowerShell or SharePoint Online Management Console as administrator, and we want to do one of these. This is what I was talking about with install module, and then you got your SharePoint PNP PowerShell, either online 2016 or 2013. Those are the versions of SharePoint that this works with. If you're still on 2010 or 2007, you're going to need to migrate to a newer version to be able to use SharePoint PNP PowerShell. So basically all that is to say that the steps are you import PowerShell Get, you install the SharePoint PNP PowerShell, and then you connect. So right here you can see connect-pnp online. Now in some of the older documentation that you may see, or older blog posts and scripts, you might see SPO online, but PNP is kind of the newer commandlets. The SPO is actually being retired or won't be supported as of, I believe, the end of this month. So if you have any scripts, because you've already used this, or if you find a script online that you want to use, don't forget to change SPO to PNP. I didn't save any credentials, so I just put in the URL that I wanted to connect to, and this is my personal Office 365. Anything but code, because as I said, I don't write code. I do everything SharePoint except write code. Connect-PNP online. If you don't have your credentials saved, then this will pop up and it will ask you for your credentials. And typically in the script, you can tell it to capture that information so that you only have to enter it once until you actually disconnect. All right. So save site as template, a real world experience. Again, this is kind of what I encountered, the whole reason that I started using PNP. If you remember with publishing sites in the past, save site as template wasn't there. That was available for like a team site. This is from SharePoint Designer. Was not there for publishing sites, so we could hack the system by going into SharePoint Designer and setting save site as template enabled. We could set that to true, and then this would show up in the UI, and we would be able to actually save a publishing site as a template. And that doesn't work with SharePoint Online, which is, and I haven't tried it on SharePoint 2016, but that's why the first two things I tried were the first two hacks that, or the only two hacks that I knew of that worked on premises. So I had to come up with something new. And that is, some people pointed me in the direction of PNP, called it future proof. So let's hope that this is around for a long time. And first thing is you want to create some variables so that you don't have to enter long URLs and your credentials every time. And then we're going to use PNP to extract a template. Then we're going to create a new subsite using PNP. And then finally we're going to apply that template to our new site. Okay, so these are the variables that I use. And I tried to make some notes, sorry. I made some notes here on kind of what some of these are. There are different ways you can do this, but the script that I found that I've used has you using a variable for tenant, and it's pretty cool. We'll see that in a minute. Makes it really easy to actually create a template from a site on one tenant, and then you can go apply it to a site on a different tenant. If you happen to be a consultant that works with multiple clients, that could be a time saver for you. Once you get a script built, then you just have to change your variables if you happen to need to do the same thing for multiple clients. So what I consider the source site is the site whose template I'm going to save. And then the target site is the site where I'm going to build the new site, the new subsite that I want to apply the template to. And then my subsite is the new site to build, so it's really just the relative part of the URL. And I have site URL. This is when I take my tenant. So basically, I take my my target site, add on the new subsite, which would be basically this variable plus this variable. I call that my site URL. So this becomes my new subsite that where I'm going to apply the template. So when you are extracting the template, you have to save it somewhere. So I just usually save it to my local C drive. Have a folder called PNP, and you can just give it a name, and then it's going to be an XML file. So that's basically what this extract template does for us, is it creates this XML file. Now once you have that XML file created, you may actually want to go in and make some changes to the XML file. When we take a look at the errors that I ran into later on, you'll see that some of the times that my solution was to, hey, I don't need that for what I'm doing, and so I just literally deleted some lines out of the XML. And of course, site title, for when I'm creating my new subsite, I want it to have a title and a description. And the very top one, credential, get dash credential is what, after the first time I log in, it saves my credentials so I don't have to enter them again, because I'm actually going to tell it to connect to PNP Online 3 times in the script. I keep wanting to stop and ask if there are any questions. So used to presenting in person.
Teresa, I have some questions.
Yep.
You want some questions?
Okay.
Actually, I'll let you continue. I have some, but I have a feeling you might answer. So let's just continue for now. But
Okay.
I will stop you in a little bit.
Okay. So the first thing is get context. And so this is where we're actually going to connect to our source site. And again, that's the site whose template we want to extract or copy. And so web URL, and this is what I really like, is this 0 becomes my tenant, and this number 1 becomes my source site variable. The -f is for force. So this is pretty, like I said, really convenient, especially if you're working with multiple tenants. Write output, this is optional. It's just if you want the script to kind of give you an update of where it is, you can have it say, you know, oh, it's connecting to. Connect-PNP online is how you will always get started. And you have to tell it the URL, so you can either type in the URL, or if you have it in a variable, you can use that. And because this is the first time I'm connecting, I'm telling it to get my credentials and store them. And it just stores them for this session. I'm not going to store my credentials in the script and let other people run this under my my account. And then once it's done getting the URL of the site that we want to extract the template from, it'll tell us basically, hey, I'm done, context obtained. So connects PNP Online, I think I kind of explained what that does. It connects us to our SharePoint site. And just like with regular PowerShell, you can use get help and then your commandlet in either -examples or -detailed. So just want to make sure that you know that still works. And if the first time you may have to install the help file, but after that you can get all the help that you need. There's actually documentation online that explains all of the commandlets that are available for this provisioning engine, and I have a link to it at the very end. I use it every time I pull it. I wanted to use PNP. I'm always looking like, what can I do? What can I do? So there's also a commandlet called get PNP context and set PNP context. So if you were going to connect to your source site, like here, this is the example off of the online documentation. So they're connecting to site A and getting a list of all the lists on that particular site. Then they're connecting to site B and getting a list of all the sites. And then they want to actually switch back to site A, so they could use set PNP context to go back to site A. And again, can get a list again. And this list here would match the list here, because there would be a list of lists on the same site. So if you're wondering why not use this particular commandlet instead of the connect to connect-PNP online, that's why, because I'm actually connecting to 3 different sites: my source, my target, and then the new website that I create. So the next part of the script is extract template. And by the way, I broke out the script into these different sections so that you didn't have to read really tiny print. Hope that's helpful. So again, we're writing output. Now we're going to create the PNP template. And you want to make sure that you include the necessary parameters for so get PNP provisioning template. This is what you would use for well, you can use this for a publishing site or a team site. If you're using it for a publishing site, then you definitely want to keep your branding files and your publishing files. And then I wanted to include my site groups. This is my permission groups. Otherwise, I had to go create the groups manually. I didn't know about this at first, so the first time I was like, well, this isn't very efficient. I'm having to create all these groups manually, and then I found this parameter. So persist branding files was also not in the original script that I used, and so all my branding wasn't coming over. And anyway, it's this script that I found that had the persist branding files and publishing files was it was by Eric Overfield. I don't know if any of y'all know him, but he's a really good branding guy. So I trusted his script, and works out great. All right, so then we're writing output that, hey, we saved it and where we told it to save. So now if you wanted to, you could actually go into Windows Explorer and go to the path and make sure that the XML file is there. That XML file is your template. You can open it up, take a look at it. If you know that there's something that you maybe have created a template from the same site before, but you needed to create a new one because something got updated. But you know that before, hey, you had to go make these changes or take out these particular lines of code or of XML, then you can do that. And I just use Notepad++ when I'm looking at the XML file. This, again, is a chart from either the online documentation. And so these are the 3 parameters that I used, and it just tells you a little bit more about them. They're not required. So just in case there are any questions, like the persist branding files, keep your master pages, your site logo, alternate CSS. So it says the files used for master pages. Now personally, I don't know if this is something with my environment. We do have a custom master page, and it tries to copy over the default, or not the default, but the original master page, like Oslo and Seattle, and it's not copying over our actual custom master page. So that's something that I have not actually looked into, because this is a case where, hey, I don't need it to copy over the Seattle and Oslo master pages, and so I just delete that out of the XML. There's probably a different way of doing that, but again, I don't need it, so I just try not to take up too much time. And then that is the extract piece. Once we have our template, we no longer need the source site. Now we need to connect to the target site, and this is where we're going to build the new subsite that we're eventually going to apply the template to. So again, I'm telling it, hey, connect to my tenant, and sorry. And
Teresa,
yes.
I'd like to interrupt you for 1 minute. So we're having a couple questions, and I figure let's take a stop real quick just to go through. So we had one question online. They just want to make, they were just asking, would this work for both publishing or team sites?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, good. Yeah, that's and the second question that we had here, I'm sorry, I just drew a blank. What was it?
So basically, if we have a site which is, we want to export
on-prem
from on-premise,
yeah,
put it into online.
Okay, so if we were to run the provisioning engine and we would extract an on-prem site, would we be able to import that into an 365 site?
I don't see why not.
Yeah.
But
you just
you are importing. One is for SharePoint 2013, and the other one PHP commandlet is for.
The commandlets would be different, right?
Right, you would have to change like this next part of the script.
But the XML that the provisioning engine creates would potentially be the same, right?
It would potentially be the same. I would check it just to make sure that there's nothing about the URL for the farm versus the tenant. But yeah, I don't see why. I did actually. The only one thing I I've done is copy from one tenant to another. I don't have access to an on-prem farm anymore, but I did try it actually from online to online, different tenants, and worked just fine. And the fact that it worked just fine makes me think that even going, you know, from on-prem to online, you shouldn't really have any issues with the XML, because the only thing I changed was, I'm pretty sure the only thing I changed was the script.
Okay, yeah, that's all. I just wanted to make important the couple things that you said, like this, that what you're doing right now is you're provisioning a site, and you said earlier that you were asking, you know, you asked around about site templates or something like that, and this is the new way that Microsoft wants you to provision sites, like no more site templates, especially for online.
Yeah.
They don't. You have to go PnP whether you programmatically make the site or you do the provisioning engine. So I just wanted to point that out again. All right, we're getting some noise here. One more question.
When they extract the content type, site column, maybe the
term store. Oh, can you explain in a little bit more of what gets extracted when you run the save as template?
Yeah, I heard content type, and that does. That was actually one of the errors that I ran into that I have documented. So can we talk about that when we get there?
Sure.
Okay.
Okay, we're good here. You can continue. Thanks.
Thanks. Okay, so somebody asked about using this PnP provisioning template for team sites instead of a publishing site, and yes, it would work. You would not need to use persist branding files or use persist publishing files. You probably still want to include site groups. Again, I would check the online documentation. There are so many things that you can do, but that would be my suggestion. Okay, so we've built our template, and now we need to build our new site that we're going to apply our template to. Therefore, I need to connect to my target site, and I'm basically just doing another connect PnP online. You do not have to disconnect from the source site. It doesn't make a difference whether you do or not. If you disconnect, you have to re-put in your credentials, so that's why I don't. And as you saw earlier, you can actually switch back and forth using that get and set context, PnP context. Okay, so this is going to be the same as before. I do have that in here about storing the credentials. I'm just kind of like to be thorough. So create the new subsite. I have notes in here about changing the locale ID because the first script that I found on the internet that I started working with actually had a locale ID of 1034, which I believe was Danish or German or something. English is 1033. And so whenever I would go to site settings, it would be in a different language, and finally realized that I needed to change the locale ID to the 1033. So if you do get a script off the internet, make sure that right here the locale is whatever language you want. And the site template, these are actually links. You can see that this site template, if you're not familiar with like STS #0 and publishing site #0 and all the different templates that there are, then Vlad, he's Canadian, he has a list out here of all of the site templates that are available. Can you guys still hear me and see me?
Yeah, we hear you.
Okay, my computer said I might be having a network connection issue. Okay, so you guys are probably familiar with creating a subsite. So we just have our new -PnP web, and you put in your title, and here you can either type in quotes what you want the title to be, or if you created a variable, you can use that to kind of just list it out, both of them here for you. So you're giving it title, the URL, the description, what language to use, and then what kind of template, whether it be a team site or a project site. I actually, for some of mine, had to create project sites. And if you create, you can create this site from using creating a project site from a template that, or even if your template was built from a team site or vice versa, it'll give you a warning, but it works. Because like I said, I was creating project sites even though my template was from a team site. So once we build our new site, then of course we want to connect to it. Do not leave out this step, because if you forget this step, then when you go to apply the template, you're going to be applying it to the parent site instead of the new sub-site that you created. And I can't tell you how many times I freaked myself out because I did that. Fortunately, no harm was done, but I finally put this in the script so that I could just run it all the way through and not have to remember to stop here and make the change. So here we are just connecting to the new site that we built. And then a recommendation that, was to turn on the trace log. And this has been great. It's really, really great for troubleshooting. Without it, I never would have figured out any of the errors. So I actually usually turn it on earlier, maybe before I create the new site. But you can turn it on at any point. But at least if you are doing this for the first time or somewhat new at it or trying something new, I would recommend turning it on so that you can see what's happening, and if it errors and fails somewhere, you can see where, and what was the last thing it was doing, what was the last successful thing it did. So we'll keep going. So our commandlet to apply the template is simply apply-PNP provisioning template. You're going to notice a lot of consistency in the naming. So there's get the PNP provisioning template to extract the template, and then apply to apply it. So really nice job. You know how sometimes in the past things have not been so consistent. So again, this is just all we're doing is actually applying our template. Now this is going to take a while, depending of course on how much you have. I would say probably takes about 20 minutes for the site that I was doing. So this does not copy over content, by the way. We are copying the shell of the list and libraries and the layout, but we're not copying the content. So if you have a list with 100 items on your new site, after you apply the template, you're going to have a list with 0 items. There is a way to copy files. Like if you have a document library that you want to copy files over, then that is actually in the presentation later. And when you're all done, I recommend that you do a disconnect. If you don't, then I've never seen anything bad happen, but I should say never say never. So I always disconnect before I close my PowerShell window. Do we have any more questions before we take a look at some of the errors that I've gotten?
Actually, yeah, I have one question on errors, so I will wait to see what you have here.
Okay. So again, this is just errors that I personally ran into trying to get all of this working. You may experience something different, but just wanted to document, what the error was and what I did, what finally fixed it. So as I mentioned, I was actually creating, copying from even though I was copying from a publishing site, all our sites are publishing, and the new site that it was creating was, in the beginning it was not, it gave me this error about this feature with ID, and then it lists the feature ID. It's not installed in the farm and cannot be added to the scope. That sounds pretty scary. But what it was is that I had to go manually turn on, in the site collection features, I had to turn on SharePoint server publishing. There is a way to script that. I did find that later on, but at the beginning, this was an error that I got that, seemed pretty intense, but it wasn't bad at all. So a couple of things I did to figure out is compare the site collection features from the source site to the target site collection. Again, this is at the site collection level, not at the site level. You might run into something the same for a site as well. I also, the way that I really figured out what this is I put this feature ID into my favorite search engine and found out what it was. Found out it was the SharePoint server publishing feature, and that's how I actually kind of figured out that I needed to go enable it. Again, like I said, same thing with the site features. You may get some that don't activate, and I haven't found any that I had to keep doing manually that I've been able to script them. This is probably one of my favorite ones because it's to me it's so interesting. Updating field failed, and at least it's kind enough to tell me which list it was working on. So it's a field within this deliverables list. Like I said, I was building a project site. And so again, I put this ID into my favorite search engine, and this is a screenshot from a blog post that I found that actually, like the only blog post that I found that listed what this is. It's the description field of this list. Now this is a brand new site, so there's nothing in the deliverables list. So I went in and I actually opened up the description field, looked at it, and I can't delete it so I just closed it, and I went and ran the script again, and they applied the template again, and it just worked just fine. Another time I actually deleted the, I couldn't delete the column, but I did delete the list, knowing that the template or the XML file would actually recreate the list. It did, and everything was fine. So you kind of have two options. Obviously clicking on the field, opening it, and then just closing it is probably the simpler one. But so those are that's why I think it's so interesting that you can just open the field, close it, and everything's fine. So somebody asked about content types. What I found was happening was these content type IDs were coming over, and they're actually tied to specific documents or specific files that were on the source site. And of course, since the template doesn't copy over content, those documents didn't exist, or those files didn't exist on my new site, and therefore it didn't know what to do with these content types. This is one of the cases. This was the first case where I just went and deleted these lines out of the XML, and I left this one because this is an out-of-the-box content type, and deleting these made everything work just fine. So you can actually find this, the easy way to delete, if you're going to delete the XML, is to just copy the content type ID from your PowerShell window, and just open up your XML in Notepad++ or whatever you want to use, but just do a find and delete the lines. That is so there's actually a set of commandlets specifically for content types. So we'll look at that when we open up the documentation, and as soon as we're done with the actual presentation. And then here's some of the resources that I use to find that information and what those content types mean. And there was a great list of what that 0x0120 means. For, there's 120, 110, 130, 140. So if you need to want to understand what each of those numbers represents, then it's in, I think, this one. I only had this happen one time, but I documented it. And this is where, in the source site, I didn't have the document content type, but on my target site, it did actually create that, and I never saw this unknown document type again. But this OE word on the source site, this was the default content type. And then when I applied the template, and it created my new site and applied the template, it made document the default content type. And I ended up deleting the library and running the script again to let it rebuild, and that actually solved the problem. So like I said, I only saw that the one time. Here, you cannot customize permission levels, and this was where I discovered about include all site groups, where you can actually use that parameter instead of having to create these groups manually. And that's pretty much what this one had to do with. So here's where I was actually going through and creating them manually, but hold on, this site includes things that have been shared with specific people. First of all, I really like that it says hold on. And this is kind of, the warning to me was, wait a minute, something's not right. And that's what drove me to further research and find the parameter to include site groups. And again, requesting to export site groups from a subweb. Yeah, I created my template from a subsite, not a site collection level. So it just tells you that all site groups from the site collection are going to be included, so not just the groups from that subsite. And that was fine with me because I'd rather create them and go delete the ones that I don't need than have to manually create all of them. And then connection closed by the server. This was actually something that happened to me when I was working from home. And this was simply a matter of losing my internet connection. So if that actually happens, if you get this, then make sure you check your internet connection. And make sure your computer doesn't go to sleep. I've tried and I've not seen it continue if the computer goes to sleep. And then error with argument. Argument really, I really did have an argument with this one. Because I just didn't understand what was wrong with it. But what it boiled down to, one of two things. So one thing was trying to create a master page library at the subsite level. Hopefully you're familiar with master pages and you know that the master page library exists at the site collection level only. Unnecessary for a subsite. So again, I went through, remember I was talking about Oslo and Seattle, that it was trying to create them and I didn't need them to be in this script. So again, I just deleted from the XML these particular lines. And specified argument out of range. I thought at first that the newsfeed web part had been removed and that was causing the error, and that turned out to not be the problem. I don't have it in here, but sometimes if you have an extra slash, then like if you have your tenant is tenant.sharepoint.com/ and then you have either your source site or target site starts with slash, those two slashes are going to end up next to each other, and that causes an error. And that actually happened to me. So be careful with all your slashes. You can check the script that I have in here because I have them correct where we don't have extra slashes. If you have any custom web parts, for example, there's an FAQ web part that some people have downloaded from the SharePoint store. It will try to create that web part on your new site, but you haven't downloaded that web part to your new site. So you can delete the code from the XML, or of course you can always go install the web part on the site before you run the template. And then, as I mentioned earlier, copy files. So for example, I needed to copy a site logo from one site to another. So logos, pictures, other files. If there is something that you want to copy over, then there is a PNP command to make it easy for you. And that is pretty much the end of the presentation. The resources, this is actually a slide that the PNP team put together and encouraged us to share. Lots of good information, good resources here. There's so much training available and online documentation. Here's a link to the PNP call that they have every month. Office Dev PNP on Twitter. I followed them when I started doing this and had a lot of questions, and they were very helpful responding back to me. Again, here's a bunch of the links for documentation for the GitHub repository. That's where you download all this from. If you need to download the SharePoint Online Management Shell, here's a link to it. Link to download the Windows Management Framework. And then the commandlet documentation. Let's open that up. So, as I mentioned, there are lots of commandlets, and here you have your connect and your disconnect. I want to go down. There's a whole section for branding. There's a whole section for content types. So you can actually remove a content type, add, retrieve. So there's a whole section here for content types, document sets. If we went in to take a look at one of these to get examples and help, you can actually click on it and then it gives you all this information that you can also see this in PowerShell, but if you just want to look at it on the web instead of doing PowerShell, get help. So this is what I live by, is all this documentation that gives you all these parameters, tells you, hey, a name is required. This gives you ideas of what to put in here. So this has been, and then see, this one only has one example. Some of them will have 7 examples. But yeah, this is going to be your best friend if you're new to PNP and you want to kind of get out here and see. So here is where you can copy the file. For lists, I love that we can go out and get PNP lists, and it's going to return a list of all my lists. And there's some for Microsoft Graph. The provisioning, like I said, provisioning engine is the most popular. That was something they discussed on the PNP call. So get PNP provisioning template and apply PNP provisioning template were the 2 that I used in the script. If you're working with publishing sites, lots of commandlets to help you there. So there's search, recycle bin, sites. Sites one I have found to be really useful. And then somebody asked about, I think, term store. So you can definitely create a term store using this. I haven't done it, but I knew that it was here just from looking at this page so often. Get PNP tenant site, Office 365 only, obviously. User profiles, I wish they actually had more. One thing that I wish that they had that maybe somebody will create is a commandlet for getting all of the users' permissions. That is something that I have not found a way to use PNP for. So webs, when they say that it's going to, what I call that when you get the context. Something I read was that, it's going to apply your template to the current web. Well, setting the context or connect -PNP online and then the URL, that is the web that it's going to apply to. So lots of different uses for the word web. That's what it means here.
Teresa,
And it's not
there's some
just
questions here,
web.
if you're
Yes.
ready. All right.
I'm
So
up.
one of the questions was about modern pages. Now, if you were to use, can you use the provisioning engine on modern sites and modern pages? One.
I honestly don't know. We are just starting to roll out some modern pages, so I haven't tried it yet. I got the same question in Atlanta, and Laura Rogers has been using PNP, and she asked the question, so I don't think she tried it yet either. I did read something this week that kind of made me think that you can, or that it's if possibly it's like in the works. So I do really think that even if you can't do it now, it's not going to be too far in the future that you can. But honestly, I haven't tried it.
Okay, that was step one. That was number one. So yeah, I'll probably try it this week, and get back and see and let everybody know whatever, if I can do it. So I'll give that a shot. But so there was a couple of things I just wanted to go back to and touch on that you were talking about. So you listed a bunch of the common issues that you ran through, that you encountered when you were running the provisioning engine and applying subsites. I just wanted to tell people, again, I've done this. I've done the provisioning engine, and I agree with a lot of the things that you're saying. There's so many pain points when you're trying it out. One thing that I wanted to just say was, if you do encounter bugs, where you should go, you should check the GitHub site, right? For the open issues or things like that, you should always check that as well as your favorite search engine, because a lot of the times you're not the first one to find the bug or the issue, and they're going to have a lot of information on there as well. Yeah, so the resources. Go to the GitHub site, and that's going to be, like you said, your best friend with working with the PNP engine. Also, so another thing, the debugging. I don't know if you have another example of the kind of output that you get from debugging, because I've never actually used that. I've gone the hard way to debug it, but I wanted to see if you had some like screenshots or examples of the debugging piece.
It's not trace.
Tracelog, yeah.
Yeah. Let's see. I don't have it synced on here. Let me look. See if I saved any on here. I definitely have some at work. Oh. And don't worry, I have like a million of these PNP folders. They're everywhere. Let me just go. It's probably going to log me into my personal, so let me log out real quick. I mean, what I have, I don't know if this would be helpful, but what I have is the actual trace log just saved in Notepad++. That's the right password. It's not cooperating. Did I enter my email right? Yes. They might have this blocked. They're not a big fan of OneDrive yet, our infrastructure team.
Well, if you want to, if you could just, later on share that. I have a couple more things that we're curious about here. One of it, I guess, is like the life cycle, right? So we're working with PNP today, and they come out with new changes next week or the following week. Like, I've worked with it for a little bit. I haven't encountered anything in particular, but from your experience, do you feel like if you make a script now, will it work and be supported in the future? I mean, how frequent are changes happening?
Changes are happening monthly. I have not run across anything that is, like, everything's been backwards compatible. They're fixing bugs, of course, but as far as the only thing that I've seen change is the instead of SPO, it's PNP. But that is the only thing that, and I've been working with this since February, so that is the only thing that I've seen change that I would consider. Everything else I would consider backwards compatible.
So here's another thing. So in my experience, I'm a consultant, and you mentioned that this would be something that consultants would probably use, the provisioning engine, to maybe take a site template that somebody's custom made and duplicate that across your farm or across your tenant, right? So that would be one use case for this. The second thing is, what are the alternatives if you don't want to use the provisioning engine? Is there anything else that we could do to take a site and make a copy of it?
I'm sure there are some third-party companies that would be willing to sell you some software.
Okay. Yeah, so like a migration. So if this is Microsoft's route provisioning engine, if you wanted to do something different, you would probably have to look at third-party stuff.
Right, and third-party stuff is going to, so like here you can use the copy PNP file, right? It's going to copy the file. It's not going to keep your version history, for example. So if keeping version history is, if including content and keeping version history is important to you, then you probably are going to need to look at third-party tools. So are you guys seeing the trace log?
Oh yeah, we see it. So this is kind of the similar thing you would see in the debugging. Oh, yes. Is this it? Is this the debugging?
Yeah, I literally copied it from the PowerShell window and pasted it.
Okay, because it looked like the ULS log for a second, so I thought, yeah, at first glance, that's what I thought I was looking at.
So this gets saved somewhere?
Is this saved or it goes right out to screen?
It's not saved. I literally just copied.
Okay, so it's just like it gets, if you have it on, it just gets written out.
Yeah, it gets written out in the PowerShell window, and then I just copied. So you can see here, oh, this was when I lost my mouse. Hang on. Okay. I can't see my mouse. But at the bottom here we go. Code execution scope ended. The object specified does not belong to a list. Oh, that's actually one that I don't have, but you can see that it was working on creating file with URL oslo.master. So you can see where it was, successful creating folder, and then it gets to Oslo and it errors out. So this is why I like to have trace log turned on, so that I can see, okay, it's creating views here. Before that, it would have been creating lists. So it creates lists, it updates fields, it creates views. So you can see what order it goes in, and then see what it does. Because, like I said, some of what it does I actually don't need it to do, but I haven't found a way to say, hey, you don't need to do this. So I just kind of let it go, and But you can, it's still a lot quicker. When I apply the template, it takes maybe about 5 minutes, maybe 5 to 10. And it's awesome because I can just sit there and watch it, which is like watching paint dry, but I can be doing other things while it's, provisioning sites for me.
Go ahead. You can ask her. Go ahead. You want to ask her?
Yeah, the same site as a template had a 50 meg limit. Does this have any limit like that?
Not that I'm aware of.
Well, this doesn't save any content, right? So,
yeah. So I don't think your files would be that big.
It's XML, right? XML definition.
You could have really high quality images or something that could.
Well, it's not supposed to save that. So that's one thing I was curious about, the branding. If you made a custom site with branding, right? You have a bunch of stuff in the style library. It's not going to take any of that files. It might copy the master page, right? But yeah, you have to copy the file separately.
We have command, PowerShell command is there. Right?
Yeah.
It'll keep your CSS and.
It does?
Yeah. If you use the persist.
Persist
files. So it depends on the parameters you use. But so provisioning. Yeah, so like when you're provisioning, here's a list of parameters. There's actually quite a bit out here. Provision content types to subwebs, that's one of the parameters. If we go back to the branding section, keep losing my mouse, sorry. So you've got this whole set of branding commandlets that you can use. And can't remember where I saw it. There was the copy file, and I was going to go look and see if it said anything about here. For copying a file, does it say anything about a size limit? It doesn't. I would imagine that the like for SharePoint Online, that the 15 gig limit still would apply. Yeah, I don't see anything about a size limit, but I don't know. Are you going to have a bigger than 2 gig, 10 gig? If it's a CAD drawing, you might. Are you guys still there?
Yeah, we're here. Oh, yeah, I'm just thinking. I'm looking at my questions here just to see if there's anything else left. I don't have any other questions. Does anybody have any questions? Oh, just kick the table. We don't have any other questions, and there's no other questions in the window. So with that, I guess we can wrap up if there's no other questions at this time. So, but I'd like to thank you again for taking your time to present to us. And we will post an update on the Meetup site with the references and your slides, and we'll link out to where your slides are. And we'll and like I said, I could follow up and try the modern site.
Yeah.
I'll just give it a shot. If no one's really tried it, I'll just give it a shot, see how it works.
That'd be great.
But thank you again, and hope to see you soon.
Thanks for inviting me. Just want you to know that this is actually my first ever user group presentation.
Oh, really? Oh, well, congratulations.
4 years of speaking at SharePoint Saturday, I finally get to speak at a user group.
It is awkward, too, when you do a webinar and, you don't get feedback and you're staring at your computer, and it's kind of like, it's challenging.
I actually did it for 4 years when I was a software trainer.
Oh, good. So you're used to it. Thank you. Yeah, SharePoint, madam. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
All right. Take care. Good night.
Good night.